cutting the corners. Maybe a strong start. I've gone through some tough myself. I also feel that a lot of what has happened in my past continues to haunt me, not only in my emotional, mental stability now, but also in damaging the relationship with my current wife of a decade this year. My first wife was someone that I have known basically since I can remember. I met her in 2nd grade. I dated her in 4th grade. Yes, I recognize the complete lack of anything real there. And we got together at the beginning of my sophomore year in high school. There were many ways that we were compatible and many ways that we were not. I never thought she was all that good looking, but then again, I don't think I am either. We did seem to gel in demeanor and entertainment. The relationship throughout high school was fairly stable until the senior year. Then things started happening. And I did the opposite of what I know I should have done. I told myself that a good boyfriend, husband, significant other trust, and that without that trust there isn't a relationship anyway. There was the just a kiss with my at the time best friend. Thanks buddy, won't ever forget that. Coupled with the complete disintegration of all the relationships with friends who watched those two get close after my buddy announced he wanted to sleep with my then fiancé. There was a mutual friend who came around just a bit too much, mostly of course when I wasn't around. There was the pot smoking and the partying. Yes, I was a moron, and I recognized this was high school, but still a moron. After high school, I tried the college thing and turned out I was way messed up in my priorities, and I hated my college path, professor, and while there I got into online gaming. Yes, I realize how nerdy this sounds. In less than a month, I had another character emailing me, chatting with me that said what would have been inappropriate things that I chatted right back with. Not dirty per se, but still not things that I should have typed to anyone. The then wife found the emails and confronted, and I realized how it sounded. Cut off all contact. Quit playing the games at all actually. I would find out later that very day she went and had slept with someone at a bar. Keep this in mind. I ended up joining the military. In hindsight, this was exactly what I needed to do to grow up a bit. Incidentally, around this same time we found out that she was pregnant with my first son. Throughout the pregnancy, she was very angry, constantly bringing up my cheating ways, and liked to refer to me as little boy when she would get particularly nasty. Things got a little better after my son was born, some of which might have to do with an event when he was really young where she pulled out in front of a Mustang doing 60 plus, and got T-boned with the then very young son. Impact was at his door, but 100% okay. After 2 years in, I was doing really well, had purchased a home for off-base, things were looking up. I can honestly remember that at the time thinking that all was pretty well. Then came the life lurch. My ex-W had been traumatically exes in her early years. For a year, by a full-grown man, while she was 8. Pretty much the worst things you can imagine between two such people happen. And then he got away with it, probation for a short period, nothing more. And, as crappy as our justice system is, he was finally being brought to real justice. Unfortunately, it had taken no less than 9 victims for them to get enough evidence to take this slime ball down. And of course, in order to get as much as possible, they wanted my ex-W to come testify. I will outright say that those in law enforcement, judiciary, and other jobs that have to see the dirty laundry of those kinds of scenarios, in my opinion, have to have the worst jobs of all. But enough about that. I go and support her. It is obviously a highly emotional time. Once we get home, everything seems normal again. A month goes by, and I notice a slight uptick in the kink factor in the bedroom. Not that our bedroom activities were ever much more than vanilla, so this was just hot talk and a slight increase in frequency, maybe 1 per a week average from 2 per 2 week. One particular episode involves her messing around with a woman and me. I think little of the particulars and just enjoy the experience. Until the next morning, I wake up to a dramatically different demeanor in her. She's practically using emotional woman garble. I have no idea why, and she's never been like this before. I remember the night before topic about the same time she asks, "So, what would you think about me really doing that?" I've been thinking about the girl thing for a while and think I want to experiment with it. As big of a moron as I have been, this set off the alarm bells hard and heavy. I calmly told her that she is an adult, that I'm not here to stand in her way, that I wasn't sure what it would mean to our relationship, and that truthfully, I wasn't sure how exactly I felt about it. Okay, so, still a moron. She clearly takes this as a positive sign, practically celebrating with her eyes, which prompts another aha moment. I say, "You've already got someone in mind, don't you?" She confirms, and I recall several conversations about the new girl at work. I try to take the issue to work. This is actually somewhat comical. Imagine, if you will, young, troubled man looking for advice at work, from sailors, about a wife who wants to get with another woman. I don't think you could wind up in a worse situation, from my perspective, than that. Dude, that's totally awesome was not what I needed to hear at the time. It actually made it harder to just accept that what I was feeling was no way, no how. That's sleeping with someone else and I can't be okay with that. It took several weeks to get to that conclusion. It was somehow harder than if it was a guy. And she said I want to experiment with gangbangs. I think I would have come to a slightly quicker conclusion, but alas, I was a moron. We talked. I took back the ring. I told her I wanted a divorce. Split things according to what we thought was hers and his. Bills divided same. I get majority custody. 30 days then she's out of the house, couldn't come close to affording it. She agrees. I had an amazingly easy time with it once I decided, head and heart, that she was gone and there wasn't anything worth holding on to. Mistakes I made here. Stayed in the marital bed. Continued having occasional good time, maybe even more. Became her friend to help her with what she was feeling. I think, effectively, she had already begun a one-sided idea with her new work friend. And she actively recruited me, and I went along with it, as her freaking dating coach. So, I end up going out on several group outings. Dinner and drinks, bowling, skating. Then came the more personal dates. And yep, I was there too. Mostly serving as bartender and complete rug for billiards and games at our house, while the STBXW was shooting for the stated purpose of getting her drunk so I can bang her. This actually pissed me off, mostly because XW was a raging feminist concerning players and users, but I digress. One thing I find myself having a problem with is the fact that the new girl is utterly and amazingly gorgeous. One on hand, my STBXW is having her fling right in front of me or working towards it, with my help. On the other, I'm going holy cow, I guess if she was leaving for a woman, she sure knows how to pick them. I would rate my XW at a 6 out of 10 physically. I was never much into her looks or terribly excited about bonding. We had a connection, and it felt right. This woman was a solid 10. I became even more of a withdrawn person than normal around her. I basically didn't want to get in trouble for drooling, staring, by the girl, because who cares what the XW thinks at this point, seriously. Then the fit hit. During a late night, alcohol-laden, truth or dare involved date at our house, the XW goes upstairs to use the restroom, and the now scantily clad another girl walks over to me and asks for a kiss. I obviously am lacking for any reason why not. Nothing besides some very piggish behavior by my STBXW has occurred, with many very obvious not interested signs from the girl. So, I agree. The next month is a whirlwind. I find myself falling in love hard and fast with the new girl. I'll come back to that part of the story in a bit. Needless to say, the intentions of my STBXW are shattered, and she's not too happy about it. But what's she going to say? She says it anyway. With the XW, 30 days is fast approaching, and she is giving all indications she isn't going anywhere, besides telling me. I start pushing the issue. You've got X days left, you got a place yet? On the Friday before, I ask, are you staying here tonight, or going to the new place? This prompts a breakdown by her, in which she admits she hasn't been looking for a new place, because she figured she could just stay in the house. I ask, what in the world are you thinking? Remember, we're getting a divorce. She says she figured that she could just stay in the house, and then when I got transferred to my next post, she would just keep the house. Keep in mind here that she doesn't make enough to pay anything towards the house, so this would necessitate me continuing to pay the mortgage while I'm elsewhere. I tell her that that was a wonderful fairy tale, but that the magic of divorce is that I don't have to pay for her anymore. She leaves, stays with a friend for a few weeks and has an apartment soon. It is during this last 30 days in the house that it becomes clear how much of a patsy I was. She had intended to fool around with women, and if it didn't go well, just come right back to me. She clearly thought I would be down with that and figured that my divorce threats were just words. I actually think it did crush her that I managed to absolve my emotion, mostly, and had the resolve to stick to it. I would have done this regardless of what happened with new girl. She started trying to win me back in desperation. I made a terrible mistake and succumbed once to bonding, which she promptly went to new girl with and crushed her. Over the course of the next year or so, the new girl and I cement our relationship. She moves in, we start preparing the house for sale. The XW and I get to somewhere amicable with each other. In the growth of our new relationship, me and the new girl discuss past relationships, and I disclose that I'm at least satisfied in the ending of my marriage, because she had the decency to tell me before anything happened and give me the choice to end it. That may seem minor to some people, but it means the world to me in terms of respect. That's when I find out the severity of the XW cheating. Pretty much every time I had ever suspected something, there had been some sort of inappropriate physical relationship. All of those times I suppressed the green monster, told myself I was being controlling, made myself trust to be a good whatever, I was pulling the wool over my own eyes. Several times with males, and at least once with a female, that just happened to be the weekend before our wedding. Bravo XW. Bravo. In hindsight, I bet she wishes she had never told me, because this triggered a change that I have been fighting against for the past decade. And anyone still reading what is sure to be a terrible novel will surmise at this point that new girl became my wife. And she now deals with the massive mental turnaround that my XW forced on me by her actions. I find myself struggling, both throughout the past decade, and to this day, with various feelings that I know I wouldn't have had before. The one thing that I always tell myself, looking back and hating that history, is that I wouldn't have the life I have now, with my current wife and my son, without that history. So, issues now. Our first several years together was heaven. She was, and is, and I believe always will be in my eyes beautiful, funny, smart, and incredibly organized. I may be one of the four, occasionally two. I think I'm usually funny, and I have lots of people tell me I'm smart, but I have done, and continue to do, incredibly stupid things. Bonding. As in most marriages, I presume. I like something that I've read here, I believe. If the bonding is good, it's 10% of a marriage. If the bonding is bad, it's 90%. Unfortunately, there's another place you can be between good and bad, and I'm apparently there. For the first few years, bonding was frequent, incredible, variable. I don't think any man would be able to complain, in any way, about what I received. This did amazing things to inflate my ego, make me feel better than I ever had. She worked to convince me that I mistakenly married a 6.5, when I needed a 10 to be an equal. She maybe brought my mental image up to an 8. I know this is a terrible thing, both to put her above me physically in my mind and having a negative body image in general. The way I think of it though, I can't magically believe that I look better. There just is no escaping the disparity between her outrageously good looks and my plainness. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm ugly. I just think I'm average. Nothing wrong with that, just nothing exceptional about it. This unbalance coupled with what my XW did causes me to question everything physical between us. The usual, did she just bait in the beginning to hook me and then change? Or did she think I was hot then, and now she's bored? All sorts of similar thoughts, I'm sure you've heard it all before. Although maybe not from the lesbian convinced me for 7 years she was straight, so what the hell do I know? In the past 7 years or so, it has been a roller coaster physically. Sometimes hot and heavy, but usually, on the whole, we do it twice a week, with only rarely ever going more than a week. I know, this is hardly a non-physical marriage. Many would kill to get what I'm still getting. But the frequency is not what bothers me. Once a week even really doesn't bother me that much. It is the mental triggers that have gotten worse and worse over time. The first thing I can think of that triggered me was a previous boyfriend. We'll call him Bob. Bob is everything that a man would want to be. Tall, fit, smart, funny. My first terrible experience was her talking to him on the phone behind a closed door, and when I went into the room afterwards, already feeling negative, she was perusing pics on her computer that he had sent her of him bare-chested, showing of his abs. I confronted her on this, told her how terrible it made me feel. I stormed out of the house. After a little bit outside, I came back into the house and went up to the room. She was in the room, by herself. She said that she was in the mood, and I clearly didn't want any, so she had to take care of it herself. This about 6 months in, and before we got married. I don't think I've ever lived that down. Not on a forgive aspect, but on a haunt my memory aspect. The next was several years later. I was attached to a submarine, so in and out of port all of the time, and even when in port I had to stand duty every 3rd day, so I couldn't come home. This is when the physically life took a dramatic turn downward, and when I first became aware of frequent alone time. I think I need to add in here that I do not think that is wrong, sinful, or any of that garbage. I have been alone plenty over the course of my life, both before and during my marriage. What I am not okay with is feeling neglected physically to the point of feeling like I should be alone, only to find out the wife is enjoying her time alone anytime I'm not home. I began to fear also that she was using it so much that our normal physical life wasn't doing it for her. At one point, several months she didn't get off with me, but plenty of alone time and wouldn't talk about making it better for her with me. Make no mistake, I fully understand that me just having fun isn't going to give her a good time and take efforts to ensure that she is pleasured as well. To make things worse, she would lie about it until I proved it, and then make efforts to cover it up next time, not unlike the WS in the stories take steps to go underground. Each time, throw away the toy, promise not to do it again, which wasn't what I wanted. It began to feel like that was the physical life she wanted and sleeping with me was her duty. For clarity, she has never spoken of bonding directly as duty. She has, however, implied it through discussion of the consequences if she doesn't give it up regularly. For a long time, I felt that the only reason we had bond was she was afraid I would leave if she didn't. I am not interested in pity bonding, or duty bonding, or any kind of bonding that she isn't actively engaged and enthusiastic about. So now I have explained, with excessive words I'm sure, where I'm at now. I know, and she has stated, that she worries about getting a good time so that we don't have a repeat of a fight where I brought that up. So, more stress on her during bonding. I have caught her alone time when our physical life was on the down so many times that I have completely given up. That has been accompanied by a shift away from me being as physical as I used to be, which she has complained about. Hands, shoulder rubs, fingers through hair, etc. She has tried so many times to make herself have bonding more frequently that everything she does feels contrived and forced, which leaves us in a sort of intimacy limbo. Neither bad nor good, with all of her efforts seeming, whether it is true or not, like it is acting only with no real feeling. Relationship. I would personally have called our relationship good, despite the physical issues. But after, during a recent fight, I checked her text messages to see she was telling a friend that she wanted to kick me out of my house. I started to detach emotionally after that, more so than any other fight before. We have recovered some from that fight, and I would say things are going much better, but I again have that acting feeling on my mind. I worry that she is just biding her time now, making plans. Did I mention she's organized and likes to plan everything? Her biggest confiding to me emotional moment in recent memory was over the fact that if we break up, divorce, she has no guarantee of the money to survive, is 1,000 of miles from family, etc. I honestly don't want much of a life if I lose her. So, I said if I do, you can have whatever, because I just won't give a crap anymore. I know that people fight, and they say and do things they don't mean. I said some harsh stuff that fight, which of course I heard about during the reconciliation afterwards. Another frequent thing I deal with that I really don't like, what a coworker calls stamp collecting. My problem is knowing what she really means, and what is just me going all crazy head about. The other issue with the relationship is 8 out of 10 things she talks about is how bad her life is, how much energy the kids suck out of her. We have 3 boys. How hard it is to run the household, cleaning, etc. How difficult it is to manage the farm by herself. We have 40 acres and just about every animal you can imagine. How I don't support her despite me constantly asking what I can do. I get that one a lot, and it drives me nuts. I don't do nights out. I don't have any friends to speak of. Neither does she honestly. I feel I get up crazy early, before 5 a.m. these days, do 12 hours at work, come home and try to do more work around the house, have an hour or 2 of wind down, then sleep for 5 hours or so and repeat. But because she's home all day, and therefore obviously gets more done, then I'm not doing my part. All I've ever wanted was to get her to be happy again. The more we go down the path of what she wants, the more unhappy she has seemed. The more unhappy, the more I try, etc. I know I'm not perfect, but I also know we've got a damn good life by all measurable standards, and she spends most of her time complaining about it and what I haven't done. It's terribly demotivating. One of the examples of this is poetry. I used to write her frequent poetry. That probably hasn't been true for several years now. Maybe a few a year. Part of the issue is that when I try, and I get the creative juices flowing, my brain starts putting negative things in the lines instead of positives. Such as starting to write a line about her gorgeous green eyes ends up with images and words about her angry flashing eyes. Something about her wondrous body turns into how I'm not supposed to touch it or I'm a pervert. Something about how smart or funny she is bringing up a memory of something she put me down over. You get the picture. All of this has been complicated the last few months by my job. I am currently working 60 to 75 hours per week. I make very good money, in my opinion, and the excess overtime hours is about to stop, so I'm hoping some positive change will occur then, and maybe I'm overanalyzing, being crazy due to stress and crazy work hours. Who knows? I have gone to and I see a couple of times that I will be able to continue afterwards as well, although I'm not sure if the one I have will accomplish much for me. If anyone has ideas how I can get past my own dangerous thinking, I'd love to hear it. My wife deserves to be truly happy, and if I'm the one making her not happy, I'd like to rectify that problem. I know what went on with my ex-W has changed me, but I don't want my current wife to suffer because of that. The very first time I catch her was walking in on her. Since then, whenever I feel she's being distant in the intimacy, I would start checking history. Details relatively unimportant, but eventually each time she would sort of admit. When I would, each time a denial at first, then slowly work around to admission. Throw away toys, promise not to do it again, even though that's not what I asked for or wanted. Work hard on the intimacy for a few days. Angry at me for spying. Say that I'm all about a good time. Tell me I'm not normal. Looking for how to let go of my old grudges about how people are and stop waiting, expecting my wife to leave or turn out to be some ugly person inside that I never saw coming. I did not cheat on my first wife. I found out after separating from my ex-W that she had cheated on me multiple times and was bi from the start, but I never had a clue, always acted extremely grossed out by it. I know I'm being stupid in a lot of ways, but it seems the rational part of me is not what gets to make the decisions all of the time. We've had numerous dirty talks, and it has gotten to the point I don't want to talk because it always turns into her accusing me of demanding more, which is not what I say or want. I have zero guilt about how we got together, and honestly the ex-W didn't seem to care about how we got together. She was shocked, out of a fog, about what she really was going to lose. There were no other women, and me and the current wife did not sleep together for several months. Long after divorce proceedings were underway, separation was 6 months old at least, and ex-W had been out of house for a few months. I hadn't ever considered the other way around. Although I do know my wife absolutely loathes my ex-W. I did not get in the relationship to spite my ex. I did nothing to encourage it before the kiss, and while I may have daydreamed about her, I figured there was zero chance a guy like me could be with someone like her. I still pretty much feel like this. And, for the record, it has worked for nearing a decade, longer than plenty of marriages that met traditionally, and I'm trying to work on my issues, and our issues, in order to make it many, many more. She was not dating my ex-W. My ex-W was trying to get in her pants and was hanging around with her a lot. There's a difference. We had already discussed how the divorce was going to go down. Details included. She was actively seeking to sleep with someone outside of our marriage. Rings were exchanged back. It was settled where it was going. All over but the paperwork, as the saying goes, and I've never been overly concerned with the paperwork. Some see it as until the judge says it's over. I do not. It was over. She loathes my XW because to this day, due to my son, we have to deal with her regularly, and for the first 6 years we dealt with her actively trying to get me back for screwing her in the divorce. Mostly over a brand new car I co-signed on before we divorced, that she intentionally missed payments on to ruin my credit, as well as getting my license suspended, weird SC rules, and a host of other vindictive things she has done. My understanding of what their relationship was, from both of them individually, is that she, current wife, had no definitive interest but wanted to hang out. No acceptance of the physical side of the equation implied or spoken. From discussing with my current wife her viewpoint on things, she has said she felt that my XW had thrown me away, thought I was great, and told herself that if the XW doesn't want me, then she sure does. Comments. First off, I think generally you have to come to some peace with the idea that you are married to someone you love and who has said she loves you, and just start taking it day by day, doing the best you can with all of the stresses that marriage, work, kids bring. Focus on the good things right in front of you, not the bad things in the rear view mirror. Train yourself to forward focus. Every day take a good, hard look at your W and kids and let yourself feel the love you have for your family, and try to let that ground you for the day. You sound very much like you need some emotional security, and you can get help from an IC with that, but there's a lot you can do with your own thinking just by forcing yourself onto certain thought paths. Second, just two related but different thoughts, questions. It seems to me that you are insecure not primarily because of the messed up way your ex treated you, but because you consider your W so far above you in the looks, attractiveness department. If internally you're waiting for her to figure this out and leave you, you might be essentially pushing her out the door by sabotaging things and putting you out of the misery you feel as you wait for the axe to fall. OP responds. Good stuff in the first paragraph. I know that I have changed in many ways since we got together, not the least of which was going from being a happy-go-lucky, carefree, fun-loving type to having a good bit more negativity. One of the other recent changes I noticed was her commenting on my being down, negative, grumpy, something I've never considered myself. When we divorced, I did all of the paperwork, and she just signed on the dotted line. No lawyers, just a couple of court fees. This has caused a few nuisance problems, but all in all saved a lot of money. Plus, I'm thinking that's the only way I had a chance at the majority custody that I got. So, her getting me back was her attempts at sabotaging me for her perceived poor situation after the divorce monetarily. Not to get me back in a relationship, but to punish me. She said so numerous times. The past actions of my XW, showing me both how gullible I can be, how well people hide their true self, and how terrible another person can be. There were more things that my XW did, but for the sake of brevity, I know I left out a lot. So, my relationship with my CW is suffering. How I treat my CW is hurting due to what my XW actions did to my line of thinking. I swung terribly from everything is okay, trust the ones you love, to what's the worst thing she could be thinking, planning. This coupled with some serious triggers that are justifiable behaviors but make me doubt heavily at times. This isn't an always occurrence. For instance, the past week has actually been very good, not the least of which is because she has seemed to perk up, be in a very good mood, very loving and accepting of me. Other times, like before, during, after a fight last week, I get down and feeling like she's just waiting around for the next available opportunity to get to a better life, but I've isolated her here, presumably sometimes against her will. Some of it is triggered by accusations that I don't think hold water, me not supporting her through things, not doing enough, some of it triggered by nothing in particular. Previously we struggled after I got out of the military. We actually made more when I was active duty Navy. I was unhappy with my job for multiple reasons and knew I could make much more and be happier elsewhere. We had numerous discussions about it, and it seemed we were both on board. Now that I'm 3 years in, and making almost triple what I made before, and quite happy with my job other than long hours currently, it has come out that she felt forced to come. How? I have no idea. Since we've gotten here, I've done my best to make our life here everything she wants. We have numerous animals, most at her request, have changed much about our lifestyle to accommodate the hobbies here, that double as a job due to the nature of taking care of them, and the tax write-offs. I look at our life as extremely blessed in most if not all things, but hear a lot of complaints from her end about what's wrong, with little to nothing about the good. Over time, these seem to take a toll on me and I start the negative thinking. I do try to plan nights out, but admittedly have fallen extremely short here, particularly in the past few months. I have been working 12-hour days, 4 on 1 off since mid-January. I also never thought about the dressing up part. I think that might be key. Haven't tried to mix trips, but have had to make 2 work trips in the past 2 years. We really can't get away for very long due to all of the animals and their needs. But we do have a camper and a lake 3 miles away. I should take charge of getting kids to bed. We are fairly relaxed with specific time, between 8 and 9 usually. I could take that off her back. I like the recommit part. It is a different way to look at it than I had been. She has gotten her bachelor's, and I have encouraged her to find work she would deem worthy, but with all of the other commitments she has said she doesn't want to. I think I'm pretty comfortable with who I am in terms of the things that I do. I want to get her to where she can claim time to do her things without feeling guilty or that she's letting anyone down. I've done everything I think humanly possible to make this happen besides literally forcing her away from the house. We had discussions before about how things I would consider projects that have no set time, and completion isn't crucial. She speaks of his needs. I think one plan that I will have is a camping, trail riding weekend trip for just the two of us. I know we should have some time in summer with all of our boys at parents, grandparents' houses. I think it important to note that I haven't caught her in probably 2 years. Prior to that, however, literally every time I felt compelled to look, it would be there. It has been an on and off thing throughout our marriage to fight about the alone time. I have flat out told her that it feels like her physical life is her alone time, and our bedroom life is a chore. She swears that isn't true, and who am I to really say different? Part of that dynamic is my problem. It is 100% possible that she is being truthful, that she wants to mess around and have an active life with me, and she likes her alone time. It is also 100% possible that she hates bonding with me, wishes I would leave her alone to take care of herself, but wouldn't ever say that to spare my feelings or prevent a negative reaction. At this point, I've done the no-no of telling her how I know, and she could easily take steps to hide it from me. I haven't checked in so long, and to a point there has been a peace of mind to it. It has come at the cost of some self-respect, self-worth, but overall, I think a more contentedness with the status quo to not always be fighting over it and going back to the same situation. Do I think about my ex? Can't say that I've ever concerned myself with where she might be after it all. After her cheating numerous times and going full speed ahead even after I put the consequences of her actions in front of her, I did a hard emotional reset, stopped caring. But I get what you're saying. I do feel somewhat that I pulled the rug out from under her, but I feel I was entirely justified to do just that. I would say that we have a fairly active physical life, 2 to 3 times a week generally. I have done plenty of taking, and that's part of the problem. It ends up feeling like it is always the bonding between us, for me, not into it from her end. This is not always the case, but far and above so. Most if not all attempts at discussing the issues end up in fights and me being told that I just want too much. It's sometimes hard to care about the physical life, other times makes me very resentful that we have gotten to a point that my urges are more hormone-based than anything. I want her all the time, but rarely have the actual urge to do anything about it due to either guilt or resentment. I recognize that these are my problems, but I'm not sure how to overcome them.